Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football.
In 3, 2, 1. Seahawks fans, welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, here as always with Keith Myers. Keith, it's a great week to be a Seahawks fan. We put down the San Francisco 49ers for our 6th win.
Not only that, but it feels like we put them down for the year. Like that was were coffin nails, because Garoppolo is now going to be out for a number of weeks. It looks like Kittle's headed to injured reserve.
That's tough. I mean, I don't wish that on anybody. That's
no, but I mean,
the Seahawks have been known to ruin a few teams now and again.
Yeah, I mean, the Seahawks have dealt with, terrible amount of injuries this year. It's been crazy. It feels like every team is dealing with a terrible amount of injuries. I think that has to do with the lack of a preseason and off-season workout programs and that kind of stuff. But the 49ers have been decimated. And
they lead the league in lost games by starters.
Yep, and they have the most players on injured reserve.
Yeah, their injured reserve list accounts for about $90-something million of their total cap.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so brutal. But, we've been there, and we're not without injury ourselves this year.
Yep.
I mean, we got a whole ton of guys, out in this last game. We were without Carson, Hyde, Upati, Amati, Mayoa, Griffin, Adams, Green, among others that were out, for the year, like Blair
pretty much our entire secondary, with the exception of Dunbar and Diggs, and even Dunbar has been banged up for large portions of this year. There were people, I swear, that were doing introductions. Like they were exchanging names during pregame workouts. They had
the tape across the front of the helmet,
yeah,
with the player's name.
And then they were out there, and then the defense had its best 3 quarters of the season to start this game, and then fell apart. But the first 3 quarters of this game was really good, despite the fact that everybody's hurt, and they were, just picking people off the street and tossing them out there, and it was a pretty good performance. I'm pretty happy with the way that game turned out.
Last week was a tough show. It was our first loss of the year. Losses are always a little bit more, they can be a little bit more interesting to talk about, but they're tougher to deal with just from a psychological standpoint. And then these wins are just amazing. And of course, to get that against your NFC West rival, the 49ers, you're right. We came out, I think they just had a tad over 100 yards total in the first half, or through the first 3 quarters of that game. We had put up, I think, 23 points in our favor against them, against their point total. And by the time we got to Mullens at quarterback, and he did put up some numbers, but the game was virtually over by then. We had to tack on another additional score by Dallas to kind of put it away, but the game was never really in question. And it was a fun game to watch all the way around. Defense finally showed up, Keith, and we're going to get into all of it. The defense, the offense, the record day by DK Metcalf. Before we get to that, and then we're going to get to the Bills. Before we do that, let's get into some news and notes for this week, just to kind of catch up on what's going on with the team. There have been a couple of personnel moves. Hey, Kitty, what's up? We didn't talk about cats and the election today. It's kind of a nice distraction. So who is that?
Ow. I don't know.
You don't.
I know.
That means multiple cats, right?
This is an audio podcast, and I'm sure this makes for a great show, but ow, I've got a kitten who's attacking me. And this one, that's Faye.
Wow. Hey, Faye.
One of the 2 new kittens. And if you follow me on Twitter, and you did during the game, my entire commentary on the game was accompanied by kitten pics. So, and why? Just because I could. And
why not?
So those of you watching on YouTube, though, just saw one of my kittens real quick.
So getting back to the real deal here, DeMontre Moore, they released, or not released. He was suspended 6 games. They had a sneaking suspicion about this guy, about his character. They kind of had some reservations bringing him back on because they were a little worried about these sorts of things. And unfortunately, he violated the rules on the PEDs and 6 games out. Now, we may need him when he's available after 6 games, or the Seahawks may elect to move on at that point. We'll just have to see. It's unfortunate for the young guy, and you just hope for the best at this point. But he wasn't getting a tremendous amount of snaps. He did help us on a couple of different occasions, create some pressures and so forth, but really not a huge impact out there. Seattle did release veteran tight end Luke Wilson today. Luke had been with the team from camp and had 10 offensive snaps in 7 games and 0 targets. So not a real huge impact out there, Luke Wilson. They did bring up Colby Parkinson, activated him off the injured reserve list, and looks like they're moving forward in that direction. So any comment?
I would say it was interesting in this game because of the injuries, especially on defense, there weren't healthy scratches because everyone that was not playing was hurt, which meant that everyone on the roster was in uniform, and that included 5.5 tight ends, because it included all 5 of the team's tight ends and Sullivan, who is drafted and went to camp as a tight end and then has moved to defensive end more recently. But that was a lot of tight ends, especially since I believe the tight end group got 2 receptions in the
and if you look at the whole tight end room this year, we really haven't had a huge impact compared to years past, which is surprising to me. I thought there'd be a lot more checkdowns and so forth. I thought they'd try to work the middle of the field more than they have this year, but there have been a lot of crossing routes this year with the wide receiver group, not so much the tight ends. And of course, Olsen signed for $7 million, really hasn't had a huge impact this year. I do believe that by the time it's all said and done, he's probably going to make a difference, especially down the stretch, but we'll just have to see. And then Colby Parkinson, who knows what we've got in that. Didn't have any practice reports on him. He had a foot injury early, I think in June. Did he have surgery on that, or did he just have to heal that? I think he just had to heal that. It was a little small bone fracture.
And there was no surgery, if I remember right. And then it was just a matter of he needed to heal. And it was going to take time. And the time is up. He's out there. He's ready to go. He was in uniform. I don't believe he played, but he was in uniform in case he was needed 2 days ago.
So the trade deadline passes with no further moves for the Seahawks. They did pick up Carlos Dunlap. They did not move Hollister. It had been rumored that he might have been being shopped. There was apparently some interest, but didn't sound like they got enough to warrant moving him off the roster. So he remains. Injury update. Philip Dorsett. Foot injury, not improving, not looking good, according to Pete Carroll. That was yesterday. Today, he shows up on Instagram with a cast on his legs, and he had surgery to remove some bone spurs. So it looks like Philip Dorsett is probably not going to play this year, if I had to put a wager on it.
Yeah, he's it looks like he's done for the year. His time on injured reserve is going to be a permanent one. And it's unfortunate because his guy's got a lot of speed and a lot of potential and really fits in well with what Seattle wants to do offensively. But, he's had this foot concern and didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And it turns out that he will not play for the Seahawks this year.
It's interesting. I will be very curious to see how the team handles this. Because it sounds like the team didn't have all the information that it probably should have had as far as medical. on Philip Dorsett, and I don't know if that's a team issue or if that's a Philip Dorsett disclosure issue. We're going to have to find out, and there may be some repercussions there on that contract. We'll have to see. Players, speaking of injuries, we have a lot of players coming back, including Damian Harrison probably this week after being acquired. We've never had him yet, but we've been waiting now 4 weeks for him to come off the practice squad and be activated for a game. Is this the week that happens?
It sounds like it. I mean, it sounded like this last week was going to be it, and then it didn't happen, and now it sounds like it could be this week again. He was on, I believe it was Instagram, might have been Twitter, and talking about that because people were like, talking smack to him about being out of shape and whatever. And he's like, no, he's like, I'm in shape. I'm not in game shape. Like you can't do that without getting out there. He's like, when I'm ready, they'll activate me and they'll play me. And so he's been kind of open about it, but it's not as bad as people are saying. And it's one of those things where I think the team doesn't want him to get hurt because they know he's a tremendous talent. It's going to be a big lift. But if they put him out there too early and he strained something because they rushed him out there, then it was all for nothing. And I think they're just going to let him get enough practice time, enough reps, so that way when he goes out there, he can be, the dominant player he was before his initial retirement and not, be subject to a higher chance of injury.
Yeah, all of that. Let's get him into the program though, and get him on the field, because I think it's totally. People aren't even really thinking about it, but the possibility of having both Harrison and Dunlap come out and assert themselves into this defensive line, to me, is a really exciting move, considering the way that the Seahawks played against the 49ers. There's some real opportunity here for some pretty decent improvement overall. So it's pretty exciting. Players coming back possibly this week. We're looking at a pretty decent list of options. Not sure about Hyde. He's still kind of nursing that.
It doesn't seem like he's going to be back.
But Carson sounds like he might be ready to go with the foot. Upati, we just don't know yet. Haven't heard anything this week.
With Lupati, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Jordan Simmons is playing well.
He's playing better than Lupati did.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, run blocking wise, I think Upati is definitely at an advantage, but the pass blocking, yes. Jordan Simmons is an upgrade.
Yeah, and I think overall, when you put the two together, I think you have that Simmons is the better player. And so with that in mind, why rush Lupati back? Let him get healthy, give him an extra week or two to get fully ready before you bring him back. And then, that way you have him when you need him. And it's not going to be this thing like last year and earlier this year where he was on and off the injury report the whole year.
I agree. I really do agree with that sentiment. I mean, absolutely. It's nice to have that sort of a situation. So far, so good with the Seahawks. I think Phil Haynes was supposed to be a guy that's on his road back onto the team as well. And he's, I think, in week 2 of a 3-week period where the Seahawks can practice him before they have to activate him. Amadi. It didn't sound like it was a serious injury that kept him out this last week. He could be back, and then they've got a decision to make on playing time with both DJ Reed and Amadi there at the nickel spot. So that would be really interesting because Reed played fantastic.
Well, he was up and down. He had an interception, and he had a couple big plays. He also had some blown coverages and
later in the game, yes,
had some struggles, but. This is a guy that's been on the roster for all like 2 or 3 days when he got stuck out there playing, and he played a lot of snaps. So, he did pretty well. You have to think the way that Ugo Amadi was playing before his injury, that his playing time is safe.
Yeah, I would think so.
Assuming that he's healthy. Now, if he's not, and he is, if he goes out there and needs he's just not quite the same. He's like 85%. Well, then maybe you just don't rush him back and you play Reed. Having Reed go out and play the way he did in this game does give you the opportunity to, take a moment and think about it and not rush him back.
think the Seahawks have been playing this really well this year as far as managing the roster, managing the practice squads, injured reserve, the timing of these things. It just seems like everything's kind of working in Seattle's favor this year so far. Mayo looks like it probably would be back. Griffin, not sure on the hammy. He's kind of day-to-day, week-to-week, but it sounds like they probably want to be safe with him again.
Hamstrings are one of those things where, it'll feel better and you're out there, but it's so easy to re-injure, and then you're back on the injured list again. So better to take it slow, give it time. Honestly, what people aren't talking about enough is that Trey Flowers played pretty well.
He did play well. It's a couple of weeks in a row he's played pretty decent.
Yeah. So after being, genuinely terrible before that, he's actually, kind of solidified how he's been playing and has been doing better. So I like what they've seen. I think that it gives them the option to, maybe not rush Griffin back, because it's not like Griffin was playing great week in and week out. He had some really good games, but he also had a couple of really bad games. And so
it makes me a little nervous, only because Buffalo does like to throw the ball down the field. Now, they haven't been very successful at it the last few weeks, but to start the year off, they had 20 or 25 plays over 20 yards completion in their first 4 games. Struggling a little bit on that now. It'd be nice, though, for Flowers and Dunbar to be able to press a little bit more in coverage as opposed to playing some soft zone. We'll see what happens. They played pretty aggressive against the 49ers. We'll talk about that in a half second. And we'll see what kind of scheme we might be looking forward to against the Bills. Rasheem Green, he's coming back this week. That's been verified by Pete Carroll. So that'll be a nice rotational piece to come in with Collier. Now, they've also talked about Dunlap being a Leo, but he's really not a true Leo in the truest sense of the word. He's more of a 5-tech guy, a guy that can really set the edge. He's a bigger guy. He does have some pretty legit speed as well, and quickness to him, athleticism. So it'll be interesting to see how they split that, which side he plays on, if he kind of plays in that 5-tech rotation once in a while, and if he comes over on the Leo side on passing downs or whatever. I'm not quite sure, but one interesting and fun thing about both those players, Green and Dunlap, is they are great against defending the run. So this team improves not only with Harrison possibly coming back, but with Dunlap signed. Totally underrated run defender on the edge. This team was already absolutely, I think it's ranked 3rd or 5th ranked run defense in the league. Is actually improving on that. And against the Bills, a team that likes to be able to run, they ran 190 yards against the New England Patriots. They're not going to be able to do that against Seattle. And so their game plan is not going to work for that.
Yeah, I mean, Dunlap's a little oversized for the Leo, but he's got the quickness to play it. And
that's where we need him.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And that's because we have Collier, and now we have Green back on the 5-tech side. So on the 7-tech side, the Leo side, that's where the team has really struggled, because they just don't have a playmaker there right now. And so I see them giving Dunlap most of the snaps over there once he's out there. And yeah, it's going to be a huge upgrade against the run game, because his ability to set the edge on that side where the defense and their assignments are kind of built around having a smaller guy on that side who's maybe not as good at defending the run. Now you've got a guy who's a little bigger and can defend the run, but can also speed rush. Gives you, it's kind of like the best of both worlds.
It is the best of both worlds, especially when you already have Alton Robinson over there as well. Now you've got Mayoa, and Mayoa is going to take a step back on snap count. And that's just the way it's going to be going forward, which is good actually for Mayoa and the Seahawks. But you look at Alton Robinson and Dunlap; those two players are very similar, and it's a good 1-2 combination.
Alton Robinson played really well in this game against San Francisco.
And he came up from having 7 snaps against the Cardinals to having what he normally should be having in this defense. We need him in that pass rush role. And I think it's, I understand the scheme situation with facing Arizona and Kyler Murray and having Griffin out there. But Griffin went from having 40 some odd plus snaps against the Cardinals to 0 snaps against the 49ers, and Alton Robinson was back in there. I think, and it showed up in the way that the defense performed. Now, granted, the defense had massive schematic shift to be way more aggressive in this game. If Seattle came out against the Cardinals, and I think was this aggressive, especially in the fourth quarter, I think Seattle comes away with that win against the Cardinals. So I thought it was a good adjustment by Pete Carroll's defense in this game. One more player, and we'll get to the 49er game. Jamal Adams. Save the best for last. Jamal Adams looks like he's going to be coming back. He might be on a snap count, but it's going to be really good to have him in the fold.
Yeah, Pete Carroll said that he was really close this last week. They wanted him out there, but he was just couldn't quite get enough work in during the week for them to feel comfortable.
And he got sick.
Yeah, and that's part of it. And so then he said, like, this week, they said he's going to – what the words he said he's going to be on a pitch count on Wednesday and Thursday. So basically he's going to be limited no matter how well he's feeling, just because they're trying to ease him back in, but they expect him to be a full go on Friday and to be out there playing, which again, like you said, he's going to be on a snap count. You're going to see him out there at times, and you're going to see Neal out there at times. Yeah. And I think that's okay, because
I do too. I think it's a real good deal.
Neal's played surprisingly well for a fourth string strong safety. Okay, he's actually played surprisingly well, just period.
Yeah, I'm surprised actually he's not a little bit better in coverage, but I think it's just the way that the nature of the defense and the way that they play soft. Mm-hmm. Neal's got an opportunity to play a little bit more press coverage, especially against tight ends and running backs. And they just haven't had him do that, but he has come up and played the run really pretty well.
One of the things that they did before all the injuries was, they had a safety in Marquise Blair playing in the nickel, and they went with that big nickel with three safeties rather than an extra cornerback. And that might be something that we look at here, where you see
that's a
times
point.
where
and
Neal,
you have Amadi too.
Yeah, where you have Neal in there as the nickel, and you run with two strong safeties.
The deal with that, though, Keith, is you're taking Jordan Brooks and KJ Wright off the field to do that, and KJ's having an amazing year, and Jordan Brooks, you don't want to stifle his growth.
Well, no, I was saying in the nickel, so you would take one of them off, or you move Brooks up into the Leo spot and let him rush the passer, and so
or you're blitzing somebody or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So injury front, we're getting healthier at the right time. We're getting into the stretch run. We've got our most challenging games coming up ahead. But before we get to the next game, let's talk about the one we just went through. Fantastic performance through three quarters by the defense. I think the defense definitely needs a shout out here. They changed it up. They became more aggressive. I think we haven't seen that aggression since Jamal Adams went out 3 or 4 weeks ago. The defense decided to scale it down a little bit. They were kind of scheme and personnel trying to match that up as best as they could, and they didn't feel like without Adams in there that they could be as aggressive as at least on the blitz. So they dialed that back. I think it really hurt Seattle because obviously we've got some challenges with just rushing 4. It gives us an opportunity to put a lot of guys back into coverage, but when you're not getting any pressure on the quarterback, it doesn't seem to matter. I mean, we've literally led the league and the entire NFL and all of history in allowing the most pass yardage in history through 6 games. And then this game happened. What was the difference, Keith?
Well, there's a couple of differences. One of them, they were more disciplined schematically. Like there were fewer people doing things that were like freelancing. They were much more disciplined than usual. And then a lot of it was just blitzing. They blitzed on 23 of 45 dropbacks. And of those 22 that they did not, most of them came in the fourth quarter.
And of all of those, Bobby Wagner was in 20 of those.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So they
really decided to dial it up, and you almost look at Bobby Wagner being in the meeting rooms earlier in the week, like Monday, Tuesday, and just laying into the coaching staff to allow them to be more aggressive, to be stronger, more physical, more aggressive, and have them dictate terms as opposed to allowing offenses to dictate terms against the Seahawks. It just is not a Pete Carroll defense.
After the Arizona game, I mean, Bobby Wagner was hot. He was angry. He was pissed. He was very unhappy with the way the defense had played, all the yards and points that they gave up, the play calling, the execution, like everything. He was just angry at how bad this defense has been and made no attempt to hide it. And then came out in this game and was very aggressive. They blitzed him a lot. He got to the quarterback. He was good against the run. I mean, he just had a legit all-pro kind of day. And, I think other people responded to it. But more importantly is people were in position to make plays and they made them. There weren't a lot of missed tackles. That helps. There wasn't a lot of opportunities where they had someone and they let them get outside and that kind of stuff. They just played disciplined defense, and that's what you have to do. No matter how much talent you have, if you're not disciplined in terms of everyone doing their job and understanding their role, it's not going to work. And that was part of what was going on. I think the more yards they give up, the more points they give up, people start trying to try and be the difference. And then you see, like in that Arizona game where Griffin, I think he thought he had the play, sniffed out. So he didn't fall back into the corner of the end zone. He stayed up at the line because he thought that's where the play was going to go. And then, got dropped in over his head for an easy wide open touchdown. And if you're not doing your job because you're trying to do someone else's job, you're just screwing things up for the defense. And I didn't see those kind of mistakes in this game, and we've been seeing them all year.
So talk about a player doing his job. Bobby Wagner, we talked about him a little bit right up front, and 11 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, 20 blitz opportunities for Bobby Wagner. He rushed the quarterback 20 times in this game. That's just crazy. San Francisco, in addition to the pass rush and defending the pass and so forth, I think Garoppolo ended up with like 113 yards total, including rushing, through the first 3 quarters. Now, Nick Mullens came in and really lit it up, threw for over 240 yards or something like that, a couple touchdowns in quick order, I think in like 10 minutes of the fourth quarter. It was just kind of crazy. And Seattle just laid back and let him throw underneath the entire time. But Seattle held San Francisco to just 52 yards on the ground. Prior to Seattle, San Francisco had successfully rushed for 197 yards, 122 yards, 131 yards. George Kittle was held to just 2 catches. We talked about the Garoppolo situation, and quite frankly, I'm not exactly sure what kind of future that guy's got in San Francisco. It's not good. In fact, his contract after this year, if he's out for the year, his contract, he's got a cuttable contract. I mean, where they're on the books for him for like $2.5 million and $10 million of cap space becomes available or something like that if he's cut.
Yeah, it's like $12 million becomes available, and it's only a $2 million, in dead money to cut him.
So he's either not going to be with the team or he's restructured. I mean, one of the two.
My guess is that he won't be cut. That he still has enough cachet and enough name that someone will trade for him, like the Jets or someone. And
just not a good move by somebody. That's crazy.
And I could see them doing that. I mean, Mullens came in. Now, Mullens didn't try to throw the ball down the field for much. Everything was underneath, but he moved the ball really effectively. 18 of 25 for 238 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a QBR of 97. Didn't take a sack. Of course, the Seahawks also stopped blitzing and went into more of a prevent defense at that point. But still, I mean, he had an effective outing. And that is going to
Yeah, I mean, you got to
point, he
take that
has
with
to
a
be
grain of
given the
salt.
at some point he has to be given
I agree.
an opportunity to just be like, you know what,
And his
gonna be your
further
team.
performances this year were not bad as well. So,
Mhm.
but all those came in kind of garbage time performances. So, you know, we'll see how it goes. You know, their offense might just be bad, regardless of who's the quarterback at this point. Speaking the other points on the defense, we'd mentioned DJ Reed having a good game, 1 interception, 2 pass breakups, 6 tackles, 2 quarterback pressures. Alton Robinson, you'd mentioned earlier in the show, had a
Great game.
1 sack added to his now 2 sack total. Seattle's 6-1 right now, Keith.
Yep.
And is going to add Adams, Dunlap, Harrison, Rasheem Green, Benson Mayo is coming back. Amadi's still going to come back. Griffin's coming back at some point. This defense is going to just get better and more confident, and it's good. All good news for the Seahawks right now.
Yeah, and actually, one of the players that we didn't mention yet was Sullivan, the seventh round pick tight end that they wanted to convert to being a big receiver, and is now a defensive end. Actually played well, got pressure, and I mean he only had 1 tackle, and it was for a loss, but he was
22 snaps.
Yeah,
which is surprising for. I mean, my goodness, this kid just came out of nowhere.
He's only been a defensive end for 3 weeks. He's literally only been a defensive end for 3 weeks.
How absurd that is? And when you take a look at his story, his backstory, how absurd that is to him. Mm-hmm. So he was homeless at some point, living under a bridge, to rushing the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks on a 6-1 team against the San Francisco 49ers. And, you know, the kid drove home after the game, and he said they didn't have the radio on. It was totally silent in the car because he couldn't focus. All he could think about was how crazy this whole situation was. It was like a dream to him. Mm-hmm. And that's just an amazing thing, really.
Well, and then the other thing I look at with that is he was saying that like being in the 3-point stance is like no big deal because he would do that as a tight end. But as a tight end, you know, his thing is he would block. So you just get your hands out there and you try and keep your hands on a player and you push him. Whereas as a defensive end, he's like the biggest thing has been just how much hand fighting, and your hands need to be, you know, violent and move, and you got to, you know, push people off of you and do all these things. And he said it's just that part of it is very different, but the rest of it, it's like, you know, it's just football.
Yeah. And his athletic profile
is crazy.
Crazy for that position. He just totally fits in with the most athletic profiles that defensive ends have in this league. Mm-hmm. And Pete Carroll said, you know, this kid's got a chance. This isn't just some weird kind of, hey, we're going to throw this guy out here because he had a great practice and we want to reward him. They're serious about converting him to defensive end. And Pete Carroll said the only thing that's really going to hold this guy back is exactly what you said, getting the physical and mental changes in his brain to understand the position and to be a warrior out there and fight hard for everything. But this kid's legit got the speed to turn the corner. I think Pete Carroll said he's 6'5", 260 and has a 4.5 40.
I think it was like 4.45.
4.45, something like that. That's the fastest defensive end in the NFL. Fast. That's what we're talking about here.
We're talking about the guy with just it's just a crazy athletic profile. And you look at the way it works, and, you know, you can put him on to, 3 Sigma athlete and kind of look at where his stuff works.
Oh yeah. He's going to be 90 percentile.
As a tight end, he was high, but as a defensive end, he's even higher because you just don't expect that kind of speed. And yeah, he's got a lot of learning to do. I mean, this is a conversion project, but he showed enough in that game. He deserves more playing time. Like, he deserves to continue to get out there on Sundays and learn and play, because he was effective at getting around that corner and creating pressure and forcing Jimmy Garoppolo off his spot. Did he get sacked? No. But did he get pressure? Yes. And at this point, the Seahawks need guys who can get pressure. If they're consistently getting pressure and not getting sacks, well, then we'll talk about sacks. But right now,
and it's only going to get better.
I say they're not even consistently getting pressure. So anybody that can get pressure, like Sullivan did, he needs to play.
And it's only going to get better because Dunlap's coming in. You got Rasheem Green coming back. Harrison's going to be in the middle. You've got Adams coming back to blitz. Bobby Wagner's already going to be blitzing. Jordan Brooks is a guy that can come flying in there. Anytime that you're trying to pick up multiple guys, it's going to give Sullivan an opportunity to use that speed to get around the edge. We'll see what happens there. So let's talk offense, Keith. The offense was special in this game, especially early. 37 points with DJ Dallas as their running back. You know, it's like, what is he, third, fourth string guy? At best. Seattle's offense right now is averaging 34.3 points per game, first in the NFL by a long shot. San Francisco came into this game as a top 5 defense by all accounts. They ended up with 2 sacks, a couple quarterback hits, and 0 turnovers generated against the Seahawks. Russell Wilson, again, was a magician. They converted 9 of 15, 60% on third down against San Francisco. San Francisco was 7th in allowing third down conversions. Russell Wilson ended up 27 of 37 for 261 yards and 4 touchdowns again. 40 yards rushing added to that. DK Metcalf, Keith, unbelievable. 12 receptions, 15 targets, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. That one touchdown where he ran across the middle and around the entire San Francisco defense to score was just pure athleticism, size, speed combo. You just don't see that in the NFL.
Yeah, it's weird because he's got this, he's got his normal speed, which is really fast, and then he's got that extra speed, which is like the Flash. And you know, we saw that
he does it in a couple strides. Like a couple strides gets him into full gear.
And we saw that, a week before when he ran down Budda Baker on that after that interception, and then in this game we saw it on that play because he got going. He was coming across, got the ball, saw that he had that chance to get around the corner and just accelerated beyond what was already scary fast, and there was no one who was catching him. And he just flew down that sideline for that score, 46-yard touchdown. Yeah. Just crazy.
It's stuff like that just makes you kind of giddy because he's going to be a weapon for Russell Wilson, and DK Metcalf is going to have Russell Wilson. I mean, talk about a great marriage. In fact, I would argue that DK Metcalf, his development and his accelerated pace of where he's at. On pace, let's see if I wrote that down, on pace in 2020 to have 82 receptions for 1,554 yards and 16 touchdowns. That is only rivaled by the guy from Minnesota.
Randy Moss. Yeah. And that's in NFL history. That's not like right now.
So,
because right now there's
you'd have to argue that sort of player is the difference maker right now for Russell Wilson too. I mean, this Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf are locked in a chemistry lab that is just perfect. It's a perfect match, a perfect fit for each other.
Oh yeah, and it's matching skill set, right? So you've got the best deep ball thrower in the game against a guy with his size and speed.
It's not fair.
And not just size and speed, but also strength, because he catches the ball through contact and all of that. I mean, he just is not fazed by contact and that kind of stuff. So Wilson can throw it out there and just see what happens because he trusts Metcalf to get it and hold on to it. And you're right. It's just not fair. And we
get to watch it for the next 10 years, dude.
Oh God, that'll be fun.
I know. So one last thing about that, Seattle in the red zone, 4 for 4. So Seattle so far this year is 22 of 25 as far as scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And they almost had another one too, because Dallas stepped out of bounds. I know they went on to score anyway, but Dallas ended up having 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. Could have had the third there, but he just barely stepped out. DJ Dallas really stepped up in this game, Keith, and showed me that he needs to take Homer's snaps.
And I know people, for some reason, Seahawk fans love Travis Homer, and I mean, he's good at picking up the blitz, and he does some nice things,
Absolutely.
Catching the ball.
Yeah, I'm not going to diminish him, but DJ Dallas can do all of that if given an opportunity.
He's not a great runner. Homer's not, and Dallas is. Like, Dallas has the ability to do things as a runner that Homer can't. And when you look at what Dallas did in the passing game as a receiver, he's at least as good of a route runner and probably a better catcher. I mean, he had a one-handed grab in this game that was phenomenal. He needs to work a little bit on blitz pickup stuff, but he's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not
18 carries, 41 yards. Not overly impressive as far as yards per carry, all that kind of stuff. But those 41 yards were important. The 18 carries took the time off the clock.
A lot of those ones were, 3rd and 1 when, San Francisco's, loading, 10 guys in the box.
Yep.
And so, he got 1 yard on that carry. That's not going to do a lot for your average, but he only needed to get one. And he got it.
I just can't say how important it is for him to have this sort of success when Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde were out and Homer only had 5 snaps. I mean, this is the sort of game where you're going to rely on a rookie, and that rookie should step up for your team to be successful.
And
he did.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
therefore he earns another opportunity. I mean, I would definitely have him in a rotation there. Especially
it looks like Carlos Hyde's going to be out.
Yeah.
And so for him to take over Hyde's role as the number 2, if Carson's ready to play, or maybe
I would like to see Dallas run between the tackles a little bit more. Most of his runs and carries were outside the tackles. So it'll be interesting to see how he survives, 6 or 7 touches inside the tackles as time goes on. I think that's it as far as the San Francisco game. Did you have anything else to add? I mean, there was just overall, this was a great game. Lots of cool stuff. No real complaints on the defense, even though they gave up all that garbage time yardage and scores there. I just thought that they did a good enough job to be able to carry the good things from that game forward.
Yeah. And I think that's fair, because there was a lot to like in this. They got after the quarterback. They were able to get home. A lot of young players stepped up, like Robinson and Sullivan and Reed and
Dallas.
Dallas. And I was thinking just on the defense, even Trey Flowers.
Yeah.
And then on the offense, Dallas played well, and the receivers continued to play well. And the offensive line people just aren't talking enough about how good the offensive line
Dwayne Brown.
Dwayne Brown's been good, but Ethan Posick at center has been great, and Damian Lewis at guard
Where would we
has
be
been
without Posick? I mean,
BJ Finney.
I'm
going
to knock on wood, because Posick's had an injury history, but man, he's just been Mr. Durability this year, which is not only that, but he's been playing way better, elevated, way better than Britt. It almost makes you wonder, where would this team have been if we somehow got rid of Britt a lot earlier?
Or when you draft a second team All-American center, maybe leave him at center instead of trying to turn him into a tackle.
I'll have to say though, he has battled some injuries, so he hasn't had enough time consistently over the time he's been with the Seahawks to be able to establish himself in any position. This year was like they did with Britt 4 or 5 years ago, Keith, right? Was it 5 or 6 years ago now at this point? They gave Britt one last shot after being a guard for 2 or 3 years to play center after Unger left. And he was able to do it. Well, and
there's another year in there, because Britt was a tackle and not a good one, and then he was a guard and not a good one, and then they basically were like, okay, at some point they're just going to try him at center.
But this was the last resort for Posick too.
Yeah,
he was probably looking at we talked about him possibly being cut out of camp early in the off season as a, as a
because
player.
we hadn't seen him.
Yeah. So I mean, given that and where he's at now, it's just absolutely a huge surprise and a very good surprise at that. So, all right. So let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. Now, when we did our prediction show, we had this, I think both of us, if my memory serves, I'm going to look really quick here. We both had this down as a loss in our predictions.
Buffalo?
Yeah. Given the fact that Buffalo had kind of a nice built roster, it was going to be Josh Allen's third year as a pro in the system. He's kind of a caretaker type quarterback. He's not a guy that's going to necessarily win you games, but this year he kind of started to be that guy, develop into that guy that can kind of move your team down the field and so forth. He's regressed a little bit in the last 3 games. Want to talk about that a little bit, but Buffalo looked like defensively they were going to be a top 5 defense, and offensively they were going to be able to do just enough. And with New England dropping back in the East there in the AFC, it looked like the Buffalo Bills were primed to be able to swoop in and kind of at least win the division and give themselves an opportunity in the playoffs. Now, the Buffalo Bills are still 6-2, so they're obviously a very good team. But they've lost 2 of the last 4 games. They they started red hot and they're kind of regressing a little bit. Their defense has given up some plays. They've not been nearly as efficient offensively. Josh Allen's really stepped back. They've tried to elevate their run game a little bit, but against a team like the Seahawks, everything that Buffalo likes to do is really hard against Seattle, except for dink and dunk. They will be able to do that. But the running game, I think Seattle has the ability to control. And then I don't think that Buffalo's designed to keep up with an offense like Seattle. They struggled against both the Titans and the Chiefs in losses really badly. They lost to the Titans 42-16 earlier in the year. And then recently the Chiefs 26-17. They've beaten a whole host of teams that are pretty average. Jets, Dolphins, Rams, Raiders, Jets again, Patriots.
Yeah, they lost 2 in a row with Titans and Chiefs, where the offense didn't do much. The defense just couldn't stop anyone. And then they've come back and they've won their last 2 games, but they beat the Jets 18-10.
18-10.
And the Jets are one of the worst teams that the NFL has seen in a long time. They just don't have a lot of talent, and their coaching staff is abysmally bad. And it was 18-10 in that game. And then the Patriots, who have really struggled since they started having their COVID problems, 24-21. That's a win, and I get that there's a little bit of exercising those demons against New England because the Patriots have been so good in that division for so long, but that's not a good football team in New England right now. Maybe once they get everybody back and, kind of get things back on the same page. But right now, that's a pretty bad football team, and they just eked out a victory there. So we'll see. There is a lot of talent on that roster. That roster is really well built,
especially
top to bottom.
The defense is really solid. I mean, they've only allowed 2 teams to score over 30 points against them. The Rams, who have a great offense.
And the Raiders
beat. And
then the Dolphins
and the Titans. No, the Titans 42.
That's a win. Never mind. I'm looking at the wrong. You're at they scored. They gave up 32 against the Rams, but won.
Yes.
And then the Titans got 42
and
in a
loss.
They
scored 16.
So
yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, when they're off, they're off. They're not a great team. But when they're on, their defense keeps them in games, and their offense does just enough. That's the formula for the Bills. I thought they'd be, they're 6-2, but they haven't been clearly dominant. They're sort of like all the other 6-2 and 5-2 teams that are in the NFL right now. They've got several different flaws, and they haven't played a tough schedule yet. I think the Bills are getting into their toughest schedule run of the season right now, starting with the Seahawks. and it's not a favorable matchup to me for them. Now, the first 4 games, like I said, for the Bills were great. Allen completed 71%, 1,326 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 1 interception, passer rating of 122.7. But they went through the Jets, Dolphins, Rams, and Raiders to do that. And then the last 4 games, he's down to 63%, 846 yards, so down almost 500 yards in the same amount of games, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, passer rating of 77. So the drop-off has been real, and that's been against the Jets, Patriots, Titans, Chiefs. So
yeah, and the Jets and Patriots aren't great teams.
No.
The Titans and the Chiefs.
I mean, the Patriots have a pretty decent secondary, but yeah, right. So, Stephon Diggs has been Stephon Diggs. He's a great receiver for them. 54 catches, 695 yards. Cole Beasley, their slot guy, 41 receptions. I hate that guy.
I hate that guy. And it has. Okay, I mean, we both say that it has nothing to do with the guy. I don't know anything about right. like him personally, whatever. The reason why we both say I hate that guy is because he's a
first down picker-upper.
He's a guy who plays in the slot, and it just seems if it's 3rd down and somebody's going to make a play to get them a first down, it's him. And it's like you don't hear from him for quite a while in the game, and then when you desperately need a stop, Cole Beasley picks up first down after first down, and you're like,
that's why that DJ Reed and Amadi matchup might be interesting this week.
Yeah.
On defense, they've got Tremaine Edmonds, a big linebacker, 6'5", 256, got 52 tackles. AJ Epinesa, who they drafted out of Iowa in the 2nd round this last year, hasn't really stepped up yet. 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Ed Oliver plays defensive tackle. Mario Addison's at their other defensive end side, 17 tackles, 3 sacks. Quentin Jefferson with the Seahawks last year and in the previous 4 years, defensive tackle, defensive end, signed a 2-year, $13.5 million contract in the offseason. He's got 16 tackles and a couple sacks for them. Jerry Hughes, another guy, 21 tackles, 3 sacks. The Bills versus the Patriots, 38 of their 57 plays, Keith, were on the ground for 190 yards. That was the most interesting thing for me. So they really have taken the fallback of Allen and decided to protect him a little bit and give him a little bit easier offense to manage and kind of a regression in a way that kind of harkens back to the 2018-19 season for him, in that's what they try to do is kind of manage the game, give him way more opportunities to hand the ball off and limit his downfield opportunities as well. That's where he makes mistakes and throws interceptions. So the more that you make Josh Allen progress through his reads and checkdowns, the more he struggles. And so there's the game in a nutshell right here for Seattle defensively is they may want to try to establish the run, which is going to be very difficult against Seattle. I think that they'll be a lot more balance in this game, I think, starting out with Seattle, given the fact that Seattle struggles so much with their pass defense. I think that's where the Bills will try to eventually end up, regardless of the score, as they want to try to take advantage of Seattle secondary. And then can we get pressure? We were able to get pressure against San Francisco, but we had to dial up the blitz a lot. If we blitz against the Bills, is Josh Allen going to be able to handle that and take advantage to be able to move the ball against maybe some more open receivers if he can get enough time? What are your thoughts overall around that?
Josh Allen is more athletic than I think most people realize.
Absolutely. He can run the ball
as well. And it's not like, he's also a bigger guy, so he's harder to tackle even when you get there. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to blitz, but I don't think they're going to be as aggressive against Josh Allen as they were last week against Jimmy Garoppolo because he is more athletic and he runs better. And they just don't want to give up a lot of scramble yards. And so I could see them blitzing at times and playing coverage dropping everyone back into coverage and forcing Ellen to go to his third or fourth read, and really seeing if he has the patience to, go through his reads and if it's the fourth player or the fifth player, or maybe come back to someone that he'd already looked at in order to find an open player, or whether he starts to force the ball to.
So how critical then is it for Seattle to be able to get some pressure?
A little bit of pressure is definitely helpful, but I think that if you have to blitz every down to get it, maybe this isn't the best game to do that, because I just don't trust Josh Allen to pick you apart if you give him time. As long as you're getting people covered, making him go through his reads and actually doing the mental part. If you make it a physical game where he can, make a guy miss and then get the ball out of his hands, or everybody's blitzing and so he knows where his hot read is and he can throw it without thinking, then I think he can do a lot of good things and beat you. But make him think, make him work. And if you can do that, keep him in front of you, not let him, no matter scramble.
What,
I think
he's going to take off on you 6 or 7 times a game for 40 to 60 yards. That's just what he does. It's kind of his history. So
it's kind of like playing Kyler Murray, but without the.
He's 6'5", 230 too. I mean, he's a big, like you said, he's a big load when you try to tackle him. He's kind of like Cam Newton in that way. Mm-hmm. Devin Singletary is their running back. He's got 93 rushing attempts already, almost 400 yards, just a single touchdown. Also 21 receptions. We talked about Diggs and Beasley. Those are kind of their 3 main guys that they like to work into that offense. Is there anything about their offense at all that worries you in Seattle's defense enough to where you think they're going to outscore Seattle's offense against the Bills' defense?
No. I mean, I don't see, Singletary and company getting a lot of yards on the ground. I mean, look what Seattle did to San Francisco that wanted to grind it out. The Seahawks run defense is actually pretty good. It's the pass defense that struggles. What scares me is Stefan Diggs, because he has, if he gets behind you for a couple of big plays, it can really hurt.
It was like they don't really have anybody else.
Well, true,
so but if you're going to double team anybody, you're going to double team Diggs.
True, but you double team you'll double team Diggs, and then you're going to have Cole Beasley, get 8 receptions underneath and turn 7 of them into first downs.
Yeah, I know. I'll take my chances though underneath with Cole Beasley. I will, and I know he's going to get those. And and those are just things that we give up and take as a defense. But you don't want Diggs to go over the top on you a couple times in the game. It's just not those big huge hitters that don't take any time off the clock are not doing any favors for Seattle. I mean, we need to stop that at all costs. Because if we do that, we get a couple turnovers out of this game, it's over. If the Bills don't turn the ball over and we have a couple turnovers, then this game is in jeopardy and it's close. If we get the turnovers and give Russell Wilson another couple opportunities to score, I just don't see any chance that the Bills have of winning this game. The only thing that really can hurt us in this game for me is some weird bad game on offense by Seattle. I checked the weather. Just happened to check the weather before we started the show, and it looks like it's clear for the most part, and 62 or 3 degrees. So it's an optimal day in November in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's good. When this game was scheduled, you see November in Buffalo, and you're like, oh, this could be ugly.
It could go either way.
But no, it looks like it's going to be a nice weather game. Get Wilson out there. I think their defense is pretty good, but the Seahawks keep playing good defenses and doing well. I mean,
we faced the Cardinals when they were top 10. We faced the 49ers when they were top 10. You go look back at the Dolphins now, at 4-3 look like they might be slightly better than everyone's giving them credit for. So
they look like they're significantly better than people were giving them credit for. Even me, like I was like, they're the Dolphins. They're terrible. But the quality of their depth on that roster is starting to show. And now they've got Tua at quarterback, and he just is he going to make more mistakes than Fitzpatrick? Yes, but he's also more dynamic. And I just see that that team, at 4-3, they are a playoff contender, and I would not be surprised to see Miami end up making the playoffs. And
I wouldn't either.
Then go look and see what the Seahawks did against them. What did they do against San Francisco, who was a top 10 defense at that point, or against Arizona, which was a number 8 defense at that point? The Seahawks have not been stopped in any game. They've lost one game because they turned the ball over and the defense laid an egg, but they have not. The offense has not been stopped. They're the highest scoring offense in the entire NFL.
By 3 or 4 points.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
That's 3 or 4 points per game. And honestly, Buffalo is not going to, they're not going to put up more of a fight as far as than some of these other teams. They've got a good roster. They've got a lot of depth. That's, I think, one of the things that is underrated about their, especially on defense. But are they significantly better defensively than San Francisco?
No, and I just think this is one of those games where you look back and you're going, this is one of those games that sets Seattle apart, I think, from other teams, not only in the NFC, but just overall, because we're just that much better on offense. I just don't think there's any defense currently constructed in the NFL that is, maybe Tampa Bay, that is designed to slow down Russell Wilson at all. I mean, and we, if you really think about it, we haven't even developed our running game yet, as a team, which is crazy. We haven't had to. I would like to. I'd love to see them put up 200 yards on a team. I think we could if we really needed to or wanted to. But I was just looking at the schedule, Keith. There's nobody in front of us. There's nobody in front of us, Keith, that's going to slow us down at all. Like
this game, it's this game. This is the last.
The last. I mean, you could say the Rams, but the Rams are faulty. They're
falling apart. They started out really good, and they're falling apart, and they're kind of coming back down to where we expected them to be. But they are still good, and they still have Aaron Donald at defensive tackle, and he tends to give Russell Wilson problems because he's just so quick at getting straight up the field.
And you look at the Cardinals, Keith. Russell Wilson's not throwing 3 interceptions against the Cardinals ever again. No, he won't throw 3 interceptions against the Cardinals when they play again. To me, it really comes down to this game because when we started this stretch of 5 games, which had 2 against the 49ers, Arizona, Buffalo, and the other Arizona game? Yeah, so it's the Cardinals, 49ers, Bills, Rams, Cardinals again. And then we play the Eagles, Giants, Jets.
So it's this group of 5 games. I said if they go 3-2 in this, they're setting themselves up for a 13-3 season, first overall seed, first round bye, all of that. Honestly, the 49ers, that was their shot. And now I think their shot's done because they lost their quarterback and their star receiver to injury in this game. And I just don't see them improving. No. I see them getting worse, not better. And so they're just not the same. And I don't see Seattle losing to Arizona again. It took 3 interceptions for Russell Wilson for them to barely beat Seattle in overtime. And
a poor defensive performance, like a totally conservative approach defensive performance that we are unlikely to see again, especially against the Cardinals. They're not going to dial up that again.
No, they'll come up with something different because that didn't work.
Right.
And so you're looking at a situation where this game against Buffalo is the one that concerns me. The rest of
Are you concerned?
I'm still concerned because I think that defense
I just don't get that feeling at all.
I get the defense is really good and they could cause some problems. I don't know if they shut down Seattle's offense, but I could see them frustrating
The
the
Dolphins
Seahawks
put up 28 points. The Rams put up 32 points. The Raiders put up 23. Patriots put up 21. The Titans put 42 on them. The Chiefs 26. The Seahawks are going to score 35 points, Keith. This is not going to be a situation where we're not going to score our average.
I could see, I can see that. I could also see it be a situation where Seattle outthinks itself and tries to establish the run, and they go back to last year's annoyingly stupid offense, and they basically give up half the game trying to run the ball into a brick wall rather than letting Russ do Russ things. I could see the Seahawks doing some stupid stuff like that, and basically just beating themselves at times, and then it just being
it's hard to get over that kind of mental positioning once in a while because they've done it so much in the past. Well,
they did it at times this year.
Yes, but overall, though, I mean, you've got to give Schottenheimer some credit.
They've
really broken those trends for the most part. And
but look what they did in the second half against Arizona. They went back to being last year.
I'm just going to say it's turnovers. I'm not going to. I think the turnovers really
put
them there.
The turnovers do, but in the second half against Arizona, they also became way too conservative offensively, and there was the first half the week before where they were just way too conservative offensively, and unfortunately I think that's Schottenheimer's nature, and he has to fight against his nature to let Russell Wilson do Russell Wilson things, and for the most part he's done a fantastic job this year, but I could see them
regressing.
Just
what would give you an indication that they would try to run the ball this week? Come out and run the ball, establish some sort of time control, clock management style that they haven't yet. At least in the first halves.
I don't know.
It just seems like you're falling back a little bit to 2019, just instinctively on this thing, just because.
Because I don't trust Brian Schottenheimer to continue to do things that he's never done in his past. I know. It's not like he didn't have Russell Wilson last year.
It's like Seattle winning close games. It's just one of those things. You just know it's going to happen.
And so it's not like Russell Wilson wasn't playing last year. He was brilliant last year, and they still took the ball out of his hands repeatedly and tried to grind it out on the ground, and even when they couldn't run the ball at all, and they failed at it, and it was just
the second
really
or third best running team in the NFL last year. So I understand why they might try to go there, but they really haven't established anything this year. I mean, what are we ranked running wise? I think we do have, a top 10 running offense efficiency wise, but yardage wise and attempts and all that stuff, we got to be way down.
Well, it's not great because when they do run, it's after getting a big lead and teams are gearing up to stop the run, and they're stopping the run. So
yes, right, yeah, interesting. Who knows? I mean, I guess you're going to take what the defense gives you, and if Buffalo's lined up with, dropping 7 or 8 into coverage and rushing 4.
Yeah, then you got to run it.
Be running the ball, and that's just the way it is. But, and it wouldn't be a terrible strategy, especially if we're successful and taking time off the clock, keeping the ball out of the Bills' hands and scoring points.
As long as you're scoring points.
As long as you're scoring points, right? All right. Anything else?
No, I'm just glad to see the team, starting to get healthy, and they're getting guys back. They're getting guys into the fold. They went into this game, right? They're starting strong safety, their backup strong safety, their third string strong safety, their top cornerback, their nickel safety, their nickel corner, right? All those guys were out. And they managed to put together a pretty strong defensive performance and win. At some point, that's a lot of talent that is not on the field, and getting those guys back will be helpful.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to see guys starting to come back. They haven't had additional injuries the last couple of weeks. At least not.
I think, Harrison and Dunlap are 2 additions to this team that we have not yet seen that are going to be absolute difference makers as time goes on.
Oh, yeah.
Dunlap might not give you all the sacks in this defense that maybe fans are expecting, but he's going to give you pressures. He's going to give you quarterback hits. He's going to force fumbles. He's one of the best forced fumble guys in the league since he's been in the league. And he plays the run just about as good as any defensive end. And so I'm very excited. And if Snacks is ready, and they've been holding him back and trying to get him into shape. And if he comes in, he's healthy, he's in shape, he could be a definite difference maker in the middle of that defense as a rotation piece that you keep healthy and you get into the playoffs. And then that guy starts destroying the middle of offensive lines. And we're just positioned really well this year. I'm just very impressed with the way that Schneider and Carroll have worked together to build this roster and to get us to this moment where we're now lined up for our toughest stretch of the year, and we're getting everybody back, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and they've really had to weather the storm as far as with the injuries, because with the running back, all our running back injuries, and then just the
defensive backs,
the defense
safeties.
has been decimated just in general with injuries. And so to weather that storm at 6-1 with the number 1 overall seed in the NFC, and now to start to get healthy, and knowing that
that's scary, and knowing Pete Carroll's one of the best closers in the business.
And you've got a couple of tough games left, and then you got the games against Washington, the Giants, the Jets, and the Eagles still on your schedule. And
the 49ers again.
True. I'm just saying, like, those are 5 bad teams. At least the 49ers are, middling. Those other 5, those are genuinely terrible teams. So you have an opportunity for,
some serious business
to do some serious things. You end up with a record, like I was saying before, 13-3, 14-2, 12-4 at the worst, and have that first round bye, have home field advantage in the playoffs, go and where you can play at home on, and not have to travel, and have that extra week to get people healthy and rested, and, really make a run at a championship. I could totally see.
Yeah. If this goes down as a win, we've really got an opportunity to have 14 wins. I mean, a serious opportunity.
This is the last great test. And then of course, you got to see how the Rams do, and do they rebound?
Yeah. After this game with the Bills, Keith, we have one more game on the road that's worth anything to mention about, and that's against the Rams.
Yeah.
And that's right after this one. So, I mean, we get these two, and it's
if they get
nobody's going to stand in our way.
If the Seahawks get these 2 games in a row, both on the road against pretty
quality
good teams,
opponents.
There's no one catching Seattle for that number 1 seed. It's not going to happen, especially not with Green Bay, losing to Minnesota this last week. They're just not the powerhouse that people wanted to say they were, and there just isn't another team out there. People want to say Tampa, but Tampa's got a couple of really bad.
They're in the AFC.
Too.
What do we care? Or they're not, but I mean, they're in the NFC. But
they're in the NFC South.
What do we care? Like, what do we care? I mean, if we get home field advantage, we face those guys at home. Maybe by then we get some fans in the stands. I mean, anything can happen in the playoffs. I get that, but come on. Who cares? It almost doesn't matter at this point who's in front of us. It really doesn't. I mean, we're dictating terms on offense. It's just a matter of our defense comes around enough. If we can be like a top 15 to 20 defense, I think that's enough with the offense that we have. It's crazy. It's a great time to be a Seahawk fan.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Let's get out of here. Follow Keith on Twitter at MyersNFL. I'm at NW Seahawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. SeahawksPlaybook.com has all of the shows archived. You can listen to any show we've done in the last 3.5, almost 4 years. And you can find us on your favorite podcast app and subscribe to the show so you get us right into your feed and don't miss a show at any time. So until next time, Keith. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. Cool.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.